Sherry, if you do the roll call, please.
Wood. English.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
McEvers.
Here.
Gookin.
So if we would rise for the invocation, we have Pastor Bill Muck with the Crossroads Community Church with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for these men and women. We thank you for their heart to serve, to answer the call, to realize that there is something greater than ourselves. There's a community that is proud to call Coeur d'Alene their home. And Father, we ask for a blessing on each one of these members, collectively and individually, as they seek your will in legislating, in governing, and in deciding the future of this amazing city. Father, may we remember that our freedom came at a high price. Our glorious freedom has been granted by you, and Father, as these men and women lead us, may they never forget the people, your people, whom they serve. Father, may this time and these proceedings just simply glorify and honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Woody, to lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't have any amendments to the agenda tonight, so we will move on to presentations. And we have Jenny Gilliam, the President and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Area Economic Development Corporation, is going to give us an update on what they've been doing. Welcome, Jenny.
Good evening. I'm still on morning. Okay, I thought I clicked it already. There you go. So I know most of you already know about the Coeur d'Alene Area EDC or Jobs Plus, but I went ahead and put about 4 or 5 slides on the front end that talks about what we do for the rest of the people that are listening to the City Council meeting. So, of course, we're the organization that helps build a strong economy through job creation, economic diversification, and workforce development. The organization was established in 1987 when we were only a resource-based community with ag, mining, and timber. The idea was to build a diverse community as far as economics and also to help build up the economy for the region. Now it's our turn to do what these founding fathers did for our community 40 years ago. There's a lot of communities in the United States that are small and beautiful and stayed small and beautiful because they didn't have the foresight that their leaders did 40 years ago. So we don't do it by ourselves. There's only 3 people in our organization. We do it in partnership with all the cities, the realtors in the area, the county, the state, the governor's office, SBDC, all the utility companies, and the labor companies as well. So the process usually works like this. We get leads from the community. We get leads from the real estate industry. We also get leads from the state. I'm going to say about 65% of our leads come directly as direct calls into the office. Most of them are small businesses under 100. The larger companies come in through the state and through site selectors, big site selectors like CBRE, JLL, all the big, Cushman Wakefield, all the big guys. They usually give us a list of things that they want, and then we respond to that with the help of the utility companies, the schools, the cities, and everybody, and that happens back and forth a couple of times, sometimes 3 or 4 times, then hopefully they come for a site visit. Our objective is always to make the next cut, because their objective is to cut people out. So we try to respond as quickly as possible, so we keep making the next cut until we're the last one standing. And so when they come for a site visit, usually there's a lot of follow-up information. We again contact all of our partners, send it back again, and hopefully that process keeps going. We're working on a big project right now. They came with 30 people. I have never had anybody come with 30 people on a site visit before. We needed a school bus from the school district to pick them all up at the airport and bring them over here. So for as far as we know, we're in the top 5 cuts. So we don't know with progress. It doesn't mean we're going to get it. It just means we're making the cut right now. And when it all happens, of course, we hope we get to do the happy dance because we have a new business, new jobs, new payroll, and then new capital investment into the community. And this is, of course, why we do it. Same thing that you're all doing in the city council. We want to improve our community. We want to make sure we have higher and better wages. We have funding for schools, education, fire, police, and other services. And we end up building a stronger, more stable community. It's one of the reasons our region has handled the recession in 2008 and also this pandemic. I mean, even though a lot of businesses still got hurt, that's one of the reasons we handled it well, is because our economy is pretty diverse at this point between these different industries. So we have manufacturing, which accounts for about 10% of our economy, and then warehousing and distribution, also another about 8%. Health services is about 12% of our economy, and then information and professional tech combined about 68% of our industry. So tourism, recreation, retail all play a big role, but we tend to focus on the driver economics, of course, the ones that bring the retail and the tourism and registration in. So all in all, we've been a pretty good, stable community. These are the strengths of our area. So the logistics, training and higher education is one of the selling points that we have. Those two side-by-side buildings in the prairie, I don't know how many times people have commented to me that, you know, a lot of communities talk about technical training, they talk about this, but we don't see two buildings side-by-side, state-of-the-art, working in tandem. And of course, we drive the fact in that these were all industry-driven projects, and that even makes it all the more enticing for them to come here, because that means our community listens to the business industry. Collaboration and access, that's one of the strengths that we have in the region. We always sell that fact. We've had Mayor Steve Whitmire come to a meeting for a company that's going to go to Post Falls. Same thing with our county. And again, we have companies that comment to us that, really, your county and your cities get together and all of your cities help? And I said, yes. We see it as a region. If they come to Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Rathdrum, Hayden, and of course the county benefits, and vice versa, whichever direction you look at that. And even the region, as we start working across the state border as well, that helps tremendously in making our region even stronger. Pro-business state, that's always good, and cost of doing business is excellent in our area, although cost of living is starting to get a little bit questionable. So 2019, we don't create the jobs, businesses of course create the jobs, 120 new jobs. And this is the direct jobs. We're not counting the indirect jobs that are created because of these companies. $25 million in new capital investment for Kootenai County, some of them going to the respective cities. $5 million in estimated new payroll. I calculated it at 15, although most of the companies we've been recruiting are paying in the 18 to 20 to 25 range, which is really something that we keep trying to push. It doesn't make sense to bring new companies here that are paying the lower wages, so we're always shooting for the higher wages. 5 companies, 4 new, 1 expansion. That included Standcraft, 3 Ops Tactical, York Saw and Knife, and then Dauntless Air. 2020, this is during the pandemic. Okay, 5 companies, again, 4 new, 1 expansion. Metal Quest is at Riverbend. And I just want you to all know that one of the things he asked me about is, he goes, you told me the housing market was tight. Now I want to know where I'm going to put the people that I'm hiring. He said he's not having any problems hiring right now. The layoffs in the Seattle area because of Boeing, he's able to recruit them, and he said probably a lot of other companies are able to recruit those displaced workers in the Seattle, Puget Sound area if they're doing machining. But he said the housing market is definitely tighter than when we were still recruiting him, even late 2019, early 2020. We told them that I think across the nation, everybody was caught off guard on what the housing industry, how strong the housing industry was going to be during this pandemic. I told them that we're working on it, and we'll talk about a little bit more of those things as well. 6 million new capital investment for Kootenai County, about 7.6 in estimated payroll. Again, I'm kind of underestimating on the payroll. It's probably a lot more money than that circulating into the area. On our project list, there's 40-plus relocation projects, 30 of which were just since April 2020. I'm not saying these are all going to become live. Some of them were clearly exploratory calls when they called us, but we entertained them all because we just never know which one's going to happen and which one isn't going to happen. So we have one applying for TRI right now. You all heard that Kenworth broke ground in Post Falls. This, to me, is a very exciting project. This is actually what I call a hat trick if we get all 3 of them. We had one company call us, brought us 2 companies with it. This is one of the 2 that it brought with us. Wow. So my guess is this company is coming because the other 2 are coming, because they kind of come together as a group. So when we get it, the CapEx and the job creation out of the whole thing is pretty incredible. So looking forward, we all have seen charts that are like this. I think we're going to far outpace these charts. When we talk to the companies, we talk about it together as a region, Eastern Washington, North Idaho, because the numbers are 745,300 when we talk about it as a region. It's easier for them to know that they're going to be able to find the workforce when the population is that big, and then we have growth like this, and then the workforce is this large. It's easier to say you're going to be able to find your workforce if you have 346,500 to find from, as opposed to 72,200. In addition to that, a lot of times our unemployment drops down. Like before the pandemic, we were at 2.6. That's below what you would have good workforce for. So prior to the pandemic, the top question was the workforce. After the pandemic, it's actually housing and then workforce. Okay, is what's happening. Okay, in migration, U-Haul and other companies that we called last year because we wanted more current information said that people are still moving into the area. A lot of this movement, of course, is coming from the 55 and older. So it's really critical that we continue to attract businesses into the area in order for all of our cities to have a balance between the residents and the business industry. If we keep just attracting the 55, we're going to start missing out on, we talked about it at NIBCA this afternoon, we're going to miss out on the young families that will fill our hospitality tourism industry. Was it Parks and Recs was talking today that we can't find people to do that. So biggest challenges we have, and even though these are giant challenges, I very much prefer these than too much housing, lots of unemployed people. So these are something we still need to address, but affordable and workforce housing, this is that missing middle that we're always all talking about. We, of course, still need the low-income housing, but the ones, our workforce probably on an average, our median household is about 51, 52, thereabouts. The median family income, however, is about 74. So the 2 different categories, okay? But that still means that the houses have to be under 400, under 450. Otherwise, the families can't afford them. So however way we make that happen, collectively, I know we're doing different things to make that happen, and I know Keith Miller is going to talk about some of that a little bit later. Talent in key areas is still a big issue. I am pretty sure our unemployment is going to drop again. I know it's been brutal for the tourism and hospitality industry, but once we can all start functioning again, that will come back to our region because we're a known destination spot, so that should come back. Response, recovery, resiliency, that's still a challenge, but all in all, North Idaho and the state of Idaho as a whole is doing well compared to other states. Available sites. was one of the biggest problems, I'm going to say 2 years before the pandemic. It still is, but I think everyone has accepted that. They pretty much know that they won't find an existing building. They pretty much know they have to buy land, they have to build. Infrastructure, I know, continues to be an issue because our roads, if we're going to have that much growth, we're going to need to make sure that our Highway 41 and everything else is expanded, and that's going to be pretty clear. And then we have a lot of companies that are starting to ask about what we're doing in terms of social, economic, and racial justice. I did say, of course, that our area is not necessarily known for being very diverse. However, we are, with our social organizations, our nonprofits, working on the social economic equity across the area. I just want to remind everybody that big challenges always give us transformational opportunities. It's no different than 40 years ago. They transformed our community to primarily ag to what it is now, more diverse. Housing, number one concern, we already talked about that. I prepared this about 2 weeks ago, so it's about 55 homes available under 800,000. And probably only 15 of those are under 450,000. 17 properties under 250,000. And that's a smaller area. That's pretty much just Kootenai County. That doesn't go, like as far out throughout all of North Idaho, not within an hour of us. And I have heard that some people are moving to different areas within an hour of the city in order to be able to afford homes. And we know that companies are scrambling. Just today, we heard that NIBCA, the construction companies, they are getting like weekly increases in supplies. It's pretty amazing. And then I'm going to leave that last part that's in bold because Councilwoman Miller's going to talk about it later. But it really helps that the city and the county are working together for solutions, along with establishing an advisory council. That's something that I can brag about because a lot of cities are going through what we're doing, but they don't have that built in place yet. I'm not even sure a lot of them have that organization that NIBCA had this afternoon at lunch already with work, with contractors, realtors, and everybody together. So we're kind of ahead. We're not, we're ahead on the planning, not necessarily on the solutions, but we're at least a little bit ahead on having the groups established already. The state with IACI, so Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, along with Idaho Workforce Development and the EDOs and the colleges across the state, is putting together a talent pipeline management program. We're launching it. Our area's focus is going to be construction and healthcare, and I think having NIBCA as a partner will really help tremendously in that one. Educational support is always something, and I mentioned earlier that those two side-by-side buildings are like a selling point. Even if I don't have time to visit them, I do a drive-by, because just seeing those buildings right in front of you is always so impressive. They know that we take technical training very seriously, and I know, a lot, like I said, a lot of companies will say they talk about it, but they don't have any proof that they actually do something. So entrepreneurial support is also something that we hear regularly from the companies that come here. And I think that just has to do with the culture that we have in the community. So having these here really helps our area. And then the resiliency for our community as we go. We talk about it immediately. We all know the first 2-3 months were just totally brutal. But I think with the partnership we already had in place, we were able to respond. I know the cities did a terrific job as far as responding. We had the mayor invited, and I think we had several mayors in the different cities invited to talk about what each of the cities were doing to address it. And then the recovery. Our organization is doing a more balanced approach again. We're doing both the retention and the attraction. During the first 2-3 months, we just focus on, let's just make sure everybody that we have here continue to be standing. We improved our virtual marketing as well, and then we continue to support the anchor institutions in whichever way we can help. Regional focus is going to be one of the ways that we're going to be resilient as a region. We work very closely with GSI in terms of something like the I-90 conference, which has been really good. Wanted to tell you guys a story about that one. Since it's a joint program, we alternated between Davenport and the resort. I think it was the third year when we kept hearing from the Washington group, as well as the ones that come in from different parts of the nation, that said, can we just do it at the resort all the time? So starting next year, or starting this year, actually, we're going to be at the resort from that point on. So that's always a good thing. We didn't want to impose that on our partners in Washington, but when they started asking, we were more than happy to oblige, of course. Anyway, like I said, we also are working with Idaho Manufacturers Association, with INEA, with Pacific Northwest Aerospace Consortium, anything that we can find that gives us strength as a region, we work with them in order to make sure that our companies stay standing. Visions for the future. Of course, we want to continue increased economic activity and diversity in business in our area. We want to support anything for advancing educational opportunities. I always brag about the forward-thinking future planning in this community. I think 18, 19, and 20, all the cities were redoing their comprehensive. The county was, the hospital, other organizations were doing different things. So, call to action, wear a mask, take the vaccine. That's the quickest way we are going to get these businesses going and running again. We do have to address all the challenges, and we're just asking that if you're aware of any business and industry that needs help, to please let us know. We'll be happy to help them. Okay?
Thank you, Jenny.
Any questions?
Any questions for Jenny? That was a lot of information. You've been busy.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Jeannie,
Woody.
so this used to be Jobs Plus, is that
Yes.
correct?
It
And
still is.
It is. but
So
you-
legally, we're still Jobs Plus.
Okay.
We switched it to Coeur d'Alene Area EDC because the Jobs Plus almost made it sound like we're a job placement. So what would happen is I would go someplace that's not within our space here in North Idaho, and I say, well, you know, I'm Jobs Plus, the Economic Development Agency, and I end up killing 10 minutes explaining that we're not an employment agency when I can be selling our community instead. So for marketing purposes, and Coeur d'Alene, of course, is the most known as far as all of our 4 communities, so it made sense to really use that as far as the selling point for our area. So now when I say we're EDC, and it goes with Coeur d'Alene, not Jobs Plus, I don't have to spend the 10 minutes explaining that, no, we don't place, we're not the job placement entity.
And how long have you been the boss?
Oh my gosh, 6 years? 6 years.
How come have we ever seen this? I've never seen her before, or I've been snoozing when you came by, and I apologize for that. You just killed it, in my mind. I saw things I'd never heard of or thought about, and I could have missed stuff, being the old guy, but really nice job. I mean, it makes
thank
my
you.
brain start working again, and that's good.
So, I mean, and like I said, we do it with the entire community in order to get the success. So the success rate for Jobs Plus, just since its inception in '87, is about 8,000 direct jobs, about $750 million in total capital investment into the community, about $85 million in total property taxes for the county, about 220 plus in total payroll, and it's about 150 companies that the organization itself has helped either bring into the region or expand. So it's pretty good track record. I was just glad I can follow from the 2 that led before me, because they certainly did quite a bit, so.
Thank you.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Ginny, you do such a good job working with higher education. You truly do. And that was kind of you to plug the higher education. I'm wondering a couple of things. The housing issue, and I know Councilwoman Miller will get into that in a little bit, but the housing issue is a concern, not just for the companies that may choose to relocate here, but really for a lot of citizens that are already here. Do you hear from any of the corporations, any ideas that they have, like maybe they build a certain amount of temporary, transitional, affordable housing that maybe their workers could stay in for 6 months or so as they try to transition? Oh, you're going to get into that. Okay.
No, actually, as a matter of fact, you know, when Metal Quest asked me to talk to them about housing, one of the things we suggested is, you know, if that will help you, it might work for you to lease some property and then put your workers in there, and so they're planning to do that. So we put them in touch. I have not approached any company yet about building, but that is on my list to start asking them about. Would you be willing to partner with one of our developers to set aside, I don't know, whatever the number of housing is for your company that's coming in? When I was working, this is when I was still in college, we were working with a mining company who was putting in a mining, well, they're putting in a mining, operation. Usually they don't worry about the housing, and they just put a bunch of trailers in whatever little town they're going at. So our organization actually I was working with a for-profit consulting company at that point, and we convinced the company to build 150 homes. So we told them, so they built 150 homes and a 30, 40 place trailer park, so that it was really controlled, really good looking. And then the homes they were pretty standard homes, but it still kept people from just being helter-skelter in trailer parks all over the place. So that's always been in the back of my mind as well, as a possibility that we can start bringing up. Same thing, we did it in partnership with the development company.
And then just one other question, because we could keep you here, you'd be great for a workshop. What can we do as a city, not only in Coeur d'Alene, but the region that you spoke of, which is fantastic? You see, Twin Falls did that about a decade ago. They focused on a region. But what can we do to be more competitive against other cities or other states? What kind of economic things can we do?
Some of the things you guys already are all doing, so like we said, the partnership really helps. A lot of times that really sells the region with just, when the mayors are all there, they all know each other and they're all joking around. So that the people know that we really, truly like working with each other. So that really helps. Continue to support education any way that we can really helps, because that's one of the things that they're always asking us about. We need to support infrastructure, because they're asking us about traffic, routes. What will it do if we put a big thing here that's going to have 24/7, 150 people over that 24/7 period, so whatever shifts that they're working on. So all the different elements that we have, it helps that our community is so beautiful, right? That really is a big selling point. But education, transportation, the continued infrastructure changes that the cities are doing, whether it's water, sewer, all those things really play a role in making us a stronger area for any business that comes here. There are a lot of them that have pretty much decided that they're going to, so that's what the pandemic actually did. Those 30 companies that I talked about, they were thinking about it before. The pandemic kind of pushed them to go ahead and check it out. We closed 5 deals that year. I thought we were not going to do anything like that. I thought all we were going to do was keep everybody functioning, let alone actually closing the deals on companies coming here. So,
Excellent.
pretty
Thank
cool
you.
thing.
Thank you.
Kiki?
I don't have any questions for you, but I had asked the mayor if possibly I would just go ahead and give the group an update on the Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, since it kind of dovetails right here. So I'm going to launch into that, but you're welcome to stay up there because you may be able to fill in some things.
Okay.
You're getting heavy on your acronyms. So NIBCA stands for North Idaho Building Contractors Association, and that was a meeting that both Jenny and I attended today where she did this presentation, and it was very, very well attended. It's the joint government issues that I have liaison to, but this is the hot topic, obviously, for that group. What I wanted to, and I'm adding to this Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership FAQs based on the questions that come up at meetings like that, and I've been going to quite a few. So let me get you up to speed on this. City of Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, Hayden, Rathdrum, Kootenai County, and KMPO, which is the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, have gotten together and formed a work group. Those folks are, the attendees are the city planners, the people who are trained, experienced, and have the resources to help us as a region move forward to address this housing and growth issue. We've added some administrators, a few electeds, and that will be a working group who's met a couple of times now to try to flesh out how we're going to move forward. I don't know, this is like eating an elephant. It's just got to be one bite at a time. So we're really trying to put together some solid foundation to make that happen. The goal, as I just said, they adopted the name Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership, and they defined their initial goals to establish a diverse resource group that can provide those factual answers to the community and to officials' questions. They're going to be able to put forward solutions and a framework for implementing those solutions based on data and supported issues with inputs on what the community wants. And the community has been very, very interested in providing their opinions and their ideas. And when I say community, I mean citizens as well as organizations. And then we'll be able to provide education on what is and is not possible and work together on topics that affect everyone in the county. How this is going to be set up is the first meeting is going to be April 26th. There'll be an advisory group that has been, the Economic Development Council is one of the members of that advisory group, along with about 30 other organizations. It will all be conducted on Zoom. The working group will have an agenda of topics that they will discuss, and then there will be live polling, as well as the ability to push the poll out to the general public through all of those organizations and through KMPO. KMPO is going to be housing all of this information on their website at kmpo.net. They'll have a link to that Zoom meeting, which will be recorded, so you'll be able to view exactly what was said and how they worked through that. There will be an extensive FAQ, frequently asked questions sheet, on how cities can manage growth or what they can do and what they cannot do legally within the state of Idaho, and that'll continue to be updated. There'll be a roster of who the working group members are, as well as who the advisory group representatives are. There'll be a summary of how the work to date has gone. There'll also be other links to things such as the white paper that Kootenai County just worked on extensively that has applications for growth management and how that affects our economy, infrastructure, et cetera. So all that's going to be housed on the KMPO website, and most of that will be complete and up to date after the 26th of this month. So these, one question has been, there's no quorums being established here, so this isn't a publicly noticed required, it's just a workshop, a regional workshop. But the group's really seeking as much input as possible, so there will be multiple areas that they'll be reaching out with this survey information and addressing stuff like that. How it plays into Jenny's presentation is that, as we said today at the North Idaho Building Contractors Association, everyone's struggling with supply and demand, and the bankers are overwhelmed and have new information coming out, and this is happening not just in our little corner of the world, but all over the country. So the information from the advisory groups is going to be critical to how this moves forward. My plan will be to just give you a much briefer update as the weeks go by on what's happening with this group, and I'd welcome any of you who have additional members. They will come and go depending on what the topics are. Ginny may be asked to be more involved depending on what they're talking about, and I'm going to serve as a moderator for the group until a good solid foundation is built and they put forward some action items. So I'll give you a brief update whenever we have a meeting, and if you have any questions or anything, feel free to drop me an email.
Thank you, Kiki, appreciate it.
Excellent, thank you.
And thank you, too.
Yeah, thank you, Jenny. Item number 2 on our presentations is fiscal year 2020-21 annual audit, and Tony Hackwith with Anderson Brothers is with us tonight to give us a presentation. Welcome, Tony.
Good evening. Yeah, my name is Tony Hackwith. I'm with Anderson Brothers CPAs, and our firm performed the financial statement audit for the city of Coeur d'Alene for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2020. I will go over, just have a brief presentation and go over the audit reports that we issued as a result of our procedures. And then I've also put together a few graphs. So stop me at any time if you have any questions. And if I'm unable to answer them, I will get back with you. And now I have to figure out how to get this up. Okay. 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 First of all, I always like to go over why you have a financial statement audit to begin with, and the primary reason is that the Idaho state statutes require the governmental entities in the state of Idaho to have a financial statement audit every year. And the primary purpose is just to assure you that your financial statements that your finance department provides to you, that they're materially correct, and also that the financial statements conform with GAAP, which is generally accepted accounting principles, or we also call it governmental GAAP. We issue 3 separate reports as a result of our procedures. One is the independent auditor's report over your financial statements as a whole, and we have issued an unmodified, or it's also called a clean opinion. Unmodified kind of sounds negative, but that is the best type of opinion that auditors can issue. And basically, that just gives you comfort that the financial statements that your finance department is providing to you for your fiscal year end are materially correct. We can't say absolute, because we do not test every single transaction, but we perform quite a bit of audit procedures so that you can rely on those financial statements. The other report that we issue is a report over internal control and compliance with laws and regulations. We test to make sure that you do have control systems in place for your financial information, and that also you're complying with laws and regulations as they result, or as in your financial system. So we're not looking at all the legal aspects that Mr. Gridley might be looking at, but just as they pertain to financial elements, your accounting and reporting. And again, we've issued an unmodified or clean opinion there. And then the final report that we issue, if the governmental entity spends $750,000 or more in federal funds, then the federal government requires you to have what's called a single audit, where we perform extensively more procedures over those funds, over those programs. So you did spend quite a bit of federal funds this last year, and the bulk of it this last year was coronavirus related. So we did perform procedures over that program and did not have any findings or anything of that sort. So it was also an unmodified opinion. I have several graphs that I've put together for you this evening, showing the current year and the past 4 years. This is your general fund, and it shows you the revenues and expenditures for the current year as well as the last 4 years. Your revenues were up by about 10.5 million from the prior year, and much of this relates to the coronavirus issues and increased funding for your public safety programs. And then your property taxes also increased by about $1.2 million. The expenses also increased this last year by 4.9 million, and that was largely due to increase in benefits and wages in public safety. Also, your general government increased, and that was mainly due to the new employee benefit trust program that you set up for healthcare, funding healthcare for the city. That was a $1.4 million transfer into that trust fund. This shows your general fund balance. So as a result of revenues over expenditures, this will show what you've accumulated over time. So the light green shading, that's your unassigned general fund balance. So that is monies or funds that you have that at your discretion to spend. And then there's assigned, which you have assigned for particular purposes. That's the red. Restricted is an outside source that restricts you, provides funding for you, and then restricts it for a certain purpose. You have to spend that money on that purpose. And then committed is just a higher level of your assignment of fund balance for specific purposes.
Tony, thank you. So when you've done the percentages, I'm sure, on the uncommitted fund balance, and generally we like to stay somewhere in between the 18% range, is that correct?
You know, there's not a specific range for the fund balance as unassigned or assigned. That really would come more from your discretion at managing that. There are benchmarks for how many days of operations that you have in your general fund balance that the Government Finance Officers Association puts out benchmarks for governmental entities, and I have a few graphs that show that.
Right, thank you.
Okay, so just like to talk about why your fund balance, general fund balance is important. One of your primary revenue streams are your property taxes, and those come in two large chunks in July and January. So you have expenditures that you need to provide for throughout the year, so it's important to have a fund balance to cover that lag between that funding. It provides prudent resources to meet unexpected emergencies. Also, if state or federal funding gets reduced, then you have money to cover that reduction. If you do need to borrow, your credit rating would be better, and it also protects you from unnecessary borrowing. So here are the benchmarks that I was just talking about. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends at a minimum that governments maintain an unassigned fund balance in their general fund of no less than 2 months of regular general fund operating revenues, or no less than 2 months of general regular fund operating expenses. And this next graph, so this graph shows you how many days regular operating revenues are in your unassigned fund balance. And you can see that previously was 93 days in 1887, and this last year at the end of the year, that's how much you had. That's how many days operating revenues you had in your unassigned fund balance. And this chart shows you how many days operating expenditures you have in your unassigned fund balance. And again, very similar to the revenues, 91, 81, and then this year's dropped down to 74 days. Do you have any questions on the general fund? I'm going to move into just a little bit of information on your water and wastewater funds. Okay, so your proprietary funds, water, wastewater, sewer, those funds should be self-operating, so the revenues, charges for services that you charge should cover the operating expenses. Your water fund, this last year, your operating revenue decreased by $85,000, which is a 1% decrease from the prior year. You had a more wet, cooler summer, so that there were less charges for water. The overall income, or net operating income in the previous year, operating revenues less the operating expenses, was $180,000. This last year, you had an operating loss of $254,000. That was, again, contributed to the revenue being down. And then also your expenses were up a bit in the water fund, and that was more from your depreciation expense, which is a non-cash expense. That's your capital assets being depreciated over time as they're being used. And then also your PERSI retirement increased. That accrual increased by about $168,000. So operating, again, in the water fund, operating expenses increased the $349, which is a 5% increase from the prior year. Your water rates and your wastewater rates were increased this last fiscal year to help cover that gap. So wastewater operating revenue increased by $582,000, which was a 5% increase from the prior year in revenue. And then the expenditures increased by about $603,000, but overall your net operating income stayed fairly consistent from the prior year.
Mr. Mayor,
Christine,
do you mind if I ask, while we're on that topic, if I ask a couple questions?
you go right
I will
ahead.
forget if I don't.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask Troy. Troy, with just the report on the water fund, do you have sort of a strategic plan and how we'll address that this year?
Absolutely, yes, council member. The plan is to have a really dry summer to help with revenues and help with that side of it. But really, it's the depreciation factor that came into it, and we have a new building up there. So it was quite a monumental year for us, and that non-cash side of it definitely helps the enterprise fund versus the cash side. So I'd take an editorial opportunity. There is zero debt in the water fund. There's not $1 owed. And when we're putting in wells that you have all been looking at, that's $1,200,000 for the wellhead and all of the infrastructure that goes with it. So the plan would be we put in the capital, we have a source from which to gain revenue and pay it back over time. If I went backwards, we'd be financing that to spread that cost over the ratepayers for the next 20 years. But we're paying all of that with cash.
Excellent, thank you.
Okay, so this graph shows the water fund over the last 5 years, the operating revenues in the green and the expenses in the red. And as I stated earlier, these proprietary funds that should be running like a business, the operating revenue should cover the operating expenses. And generally, 2016, it was more of almost a break even, but these last other 3 years before 2020, revenues were over expenses. This last year, we just discussed why the water fund was down, revenues compared to operating expenses. And this is the wastewater fund, same thing, operating in the green for the last 4 years. So just in 16, and I can't recall in 16 what, maybe just the rates were needing to be increased in those that year for both water and wastewater. But wastewater is operating, in the green, so. And that is all I have for this evening. If you have any
So
questions.
several months' worth of work boiled down to 15 minutes of a presentation.
Yes.
Troy, the audit is online on our website for anyone that wants to peruse through it. It's, an inch or so thick. There's a lot of information in there.
Yes.
Any other questions from council members on that?
Mr. Mayor, just a compliment on a clean audit. Nice work, and thank you, Tony.
Yeah,
Just one more comment in kind of along the line of Mayor Whitmire. The front of the audit report or the financial statement package, there's what's called the management's discussion and analysis, and that is kind of like a narrative or book report of the city this last year. So that's, I would say that's a really key thing to look at and read. Makes a lot more sense than some of the financial statement numbers and things like that, but just, yeah.
Excellent.
And thank you, too, to Vonnie and her team. It takes a lot of work on their part
Oh,
to
yeah.
work together with our audit team to come up with all of these reports, which shows that the city of Coeur d'Alene financially does things right, and we're in a pretty sound financial position. Troy, did you have something to add there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. This is really quite an accomplishment in this past year. Your fund balance grew, and we had forecasted $1 million coming out of fund balance to operate that year. So the finance department, Stephanie Padilla is with us today, Tony overseeing this work, and the team at the city of Coeur d'Alene during a pandemic kept and grew your fund balance. And so we were extremely conservative in a real tough year, and it shows up right here. We would have forecasted about a $8 million fund balance 1 year ago today. So I want to shout out to all the team members and the department heads that have done such a great job in a really challenging year.
All right, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Move on to item number 3 here, which is a proclamation for Arbor Day. Nick, if you want to come up, and I have a proclamation to read, and then I'll present it to you. So in honor of Arbor Day, this proclamation says, whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. Whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. I never knew they had 1 million trees in Nebraska. Whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, lower our heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. Whereas trees, whenever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2021 as Arbor Day. And Nick, do you have an Arbor Day message for us?
I do. I want to thank the mayor for the proclamation, and it is once again a pleasure to be in front of the council so quickly. Let's see here. So I'm going to try to make this pretty quick today, and okay. So feels fitting to talk about trees this year after we have seen so much tree damage to our city this last winter. Been pretty devastating throughout Coeur d'Alene. We've seen a lot of our large-scale trees go down in some of our most historic neighborhoods. We went back and forth this year about whether we were going to be able to hold an Arbor Day, and as you know, last year we weren't able to hold one, which was, I don't remember ever seeing a year where we didn't have an Arbor Day. But we have decided to hold a small Arbor Day celebration this year. We are going to do a small tree planting, and we are going to be planting trees at, this is not updated, we're going to be planting trees at Memorial Park, at McEwen Park, excuse me. We're going to be planting trees, 2 trees that are donated by Bartlett Northwest Health/Northwest Plant Healthcare, and we're going to just have pastries and coffee that are donated by Sun Valley Tree Service. We're going to be planting 2 trees and just giving out information to the public. It's going to be a real small celebration. We're planning on socially distancing and having masks available and hand sanitizer available for those that choose to join us. And just be a 2-hour celebration, 11 o'clock to 1. That will be Saturday, May 1st at McEwen Park. We're going to have to sell, and this will be at noon in the pavilion. This will be after the planting. We're just going to plant those 2 trees, and then we'll move on to a small celebration where we will be presented with the Tree City USA Award. This is our 37th year as a Tree City USA through the Arbor Day Foundation. We'll have a small amount of free seedlings to give out to the public. We are also working on having Sun Valley Tree Service there to hand out white pine seedlings. There was some shortage of seedlings this year, so he is working to make that happen, and we appreciate his efforts, of course. I will have a few door prizes. I always like to raffle off a few larger scale trees to the public. It's a free raffle for those that attend. We just hand out tickets, and every year somebody goes home with, at least one person goes home with a large scale tree to plant in their yard. So this year, with Tree City USA, in 2020, we planted 795 public trees. That's in both parks and right-of-way locations. We removed, 99 public trees were removed from parks or right-of-way locations. Now, that does not include the tree loss we experienced in January of 2021. So we can look forward to seeing that next year. Tree maintenance, 877 trees, public trees were pruned this year. And once again, none of this includes the work that was done after the windstorm and also the storm in November. Most of that will be included next year. Other events that are going to take place that day. We're working in conjunction with North Idaho College. They are Tree Campus USA, and we're filming a tree planting video that will be available as well. We are trying to incorporate some at-home celebration this year. We're filming that, just wrapping up filming tomorrow. And it should be pretty fun. They kind of went a different direction with it than I expected. Batman is involved, so that will be fun. Did a seedling packing was today. It was a small seedling packing. We did not have any attendees other than the people working, and it went well. We have about 400 seedlings that are going out to the public schools in Lakeland. Now, that is through Arbor Day organization or North Idaho. They are a North Idaho organization, so they're not Coeur d'Alene School District specific. And they were the only school that signed up for this program this year as they battled through some of the difficulties in navigating their new school schedule through COVID-19. Tree planting on Tugs Hill is planned with a volunteer group. That will be on Saturday as well, and I am waiting on information from that gentleman so I can send that out to the public. And he is coordinating the whole thing, and it's a great thing he's doing. He's planting white pine and ponderosa pine seedlings on the hill, mainly on the east side of the hill is my understanding, and I'm helping coordinate that planting, and he's doing all volunteer work. So hopefully that will help replenish some of the trees we lost from this windstorm. The seedling program, as I mentioned before, generally we give out, through the Arbor Day organization North Idaho, we give out seedlings to all fourth grade students within Lakeland School District, Coeur d'Alene School District, Post Falls School District. This year, only Lakeland School District chose to take part in our giveaway. I think a lot of that had to do with the logistics of kids that maybe weren't in school full-time at the time we planned this out. And for whatever reason, they chose not to take place, which we miss them, but hopefully they'll be back next year. But we are sending out, every fourth grade student in Lakeland School District will receive a seedling this year, and we look forward to getting those in their hands next for Arbor Day. Usually we have some art contests for Arbor Day. This year and last year, we unfortunately, because of the difficulties in working with the schools, we're not able to do that. We are planning next year to have that added to the curriculum. I'm working with some of the school district to see if we can actually add Arbor Day as part of the school curriculum to the 2022-2023 school curriculum, I guess that would be. And hopefully we can actually have that as part, so moving forward we'll have some better art programs, and hopefully we can get some better education, get involved in educating children in our schools about trees and the importance of Arbor Day. So aside from that, Arbor Day is May 1st at McCune Park. As I said, we'll have coffee and donuts. We're trying to keep things small. We're trying to keep things separated, but we didn't want to miss another year of not celebrating Arbor Day. I am encouraging the public. We will have a few limited seedlings, but there is a large seedling giveaway being hosted by North Idaho College. That will be on May 1st from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock at the library on the campus. So please drive through and pick up your trees. And with that, I appreciate the council's time, and I am finished.
Any questions for Nick? All right, Nick, appreciate all that you do for trees.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We'll move on to public comment. If there's any member of the audience that wishes to address council, they'll have 3 minutes to do so on city business. Anyone wishing to give public comment, come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Richard Price. I live in the city of Coeur d'Alene at 714 East Wallace Avenue. Appreciate this opportunity to speak tonight. I know we almost lost that a while back. Earlier today, I sent an email to council about my objections to a amendment to the municipal code 9.22.010. I never got any replies to that, so I don't know if everybody agrees with me, doesn't care, or already made up their mind. But if they didn't get it, I got copies here, so you can just let your clerk know to get them from me, and she can disperse them.
I think everybody got it, and everybody read it.
Wonderful, because I didn't want to have to go over those points again.
Okay.
I've got a new point, and then I want to expand on another one. In section 1 of that, and just to restate it, I do want to explicitly express my opposition to any amendment to the municipal code, section 9.22.010. A new point I have, in section 1, every person is guilty of disorderly conduct, including, and I'm skipping a few bits here, challenging somebody to a fight. And then in section 2, the definition of a fight includes wrestling. So, Mr. Mayor, if you and I disagreed about something, and I said, Steve, let's arm wrestle for it, technically, boom, I'm guilty under that section because I just challenged you to a fight. But if you say, okay, Richard, let's arm wrestle for it, by the way, you'd probably win. And a cop walks in and sees us wrestling, then we're both guilty under this section. Now, I know somebody's going to say that's not the intent of the law, and I would probably agree with that, but technically, you know I'm right. And if it's not the intent of the law, then I say leave it out. Better yet, I say don't do anything at all about it. The second point I want to make is, how do you define a reasonable person? You started this meeting tonight with about 12 people behind me, and now there's about half that. But I say if you ask all of them to define a reasonable person, you're going to get as many people back there, you're going to get as many different answers. How is it defined? Is it based on age? Is it based on bias? It probably is. Older person's going to think differently about a situation than a younger person. People with different life experiences are going to think differently about a situation than somebody with other life experiences. It depends on where you're standing in life, I guess. So that's just kind of way out there. I just don't know. And then who decides what a reasonable person is? The police, the courts. Gosh forbid if we have to go to court for it. I just don't think that's acceptable. And then I'll leave you thinking about this on a lighthearted note, or maybe not. I might find it offensive, and they use that word in here, if a elected official showed up here in shorts, like maybe they came here from the lake instead of to a important meeting like we're in here tonight in these chambers, in your chambers, in our chambers. But I would never, never support a law or a regulation that told somebody how to dress or what to wear, or in this case, how to act, how to speak. I just don't support it. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any others in the audience wishing to give public comment tonight? Anyone out on Zoom? Sherry?
We have 2 people that are Zooming in. No one has their hand raised.
All right. Okay, so we will move on to announcements. Any member of the council have an announcement tonight? Kiki?
I have 2. I attended the county address to the Chamber of Commerce this morning, and just wanted to dovetail on the fact that the county's very concerned about recruitment issues because of housing costs, and I think they're very interested in getting involved with a regional planning effort. There's a lot of folks who are concerned about the rapid growth, but there's multiple layers of issues with that. So the county is very well aware of it, doing a lot of work with the group, and very concerned about that. And the fair is going to be 10 days long this year. Just you'll read about that, but that'll be kind of cool. The other thing I want to mention real quick is I stepped in to judge the Northwest Entrepreneur Competition, which is through the North Idaho College's Venture Program. Fascinating talent in this community in our colleges that come up with great business plans, and they do a pitch to judges. And the winner in my category received $10,000. She's a brilliant engineer from University of Idaho that came up with a Campus Crusher alumni logo wall hanging. And it's very cool. University of Idaho logo or whatever the brand is on the wall, and then you can crush your beer cans with it, I guess, and it starts, aluminum recycling. It's very neat. But anyway, it was very uplifting, very enthusiastic, and just a huge amount of resources and talent. So that was a great thing to attend.
Are you saying that's a good gift for any college-bound senior? in high school?
I think alumni. I think it's a graduation present.
Oh, okay.
Take it with you and continue crushing your college years. There you go.
Any other members that would?
Well, today our Zoom tech guy, the guy who runs Zoom for us back behind the scenes here, that gives me good profiles, it's Chaz's birthday, and he sent these to all of us. They're in the break room, so
All right.
happy birthday, Chaz. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Wood. Anyone else? Christie?
Mr. Mayor, I'll just update council that the committee met to work on the latest RFP for Atlas, reviewed all of the different proposals, and there will be some recommendations coming forward. But what I wanted to let you know is that I have asked Tony Burns to come forward, and I think he's going to come the first meeting in May, maybe, Troy, if that's what you recall? and give a more thorough report to council on everything that's happening on the Atlas site. So I don't want to jump the gun or maybe not speak correctly, but I have asked for the experts to come and share everything with council, so you can look forward to that.
Right, great, thank you. All right, move on to the consent calendar. Woody, you got that?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 21025.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Sherry.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Motion carried. Move on to other business. This is Council Bill number 21-1006, the one that Mr. Price was speaking to us about. So this is approving amendments to Municipal Code Chapter 9.22 to prohibit disorderly conduct, to clarify what conduct shall be included, and to add definitions to the term riotous and threatening. And again, and I'm sure you'll get into that, Mike, these are amendments to an existing ordinance. Yeah.
That is correct. We are amending or proposing to amend ordinance that was passed in the recent past to address fighting. And so felt like the conduct that council has expressed concern about recently and asked law enforcement to look into it. Law enforcement, we have the guys in the blue who do the hard work on the streets dealing with people. And then you have the prosecutors who are the folks who take that and apply the law and take it to court and enforce the law. So we've worked together with PD to come up with what we think is an ordinance that will give them a tool on the streets to deal with the conduct that we don't want to see happening. At the same time, giving our prosecutors the ability to take something to court. And maybe I'll start off by addressing one of Mr. Price's points, which I think is a point well taken, about who is a reasonable person. And we could all probably agree to disagree. That may be something hard to find. But what happens in court, and that's a concept that's been around for a long time, negligence law is based on the conduct of an ordinary, reasonable person under similar circumstances, and that's what would be applied here. And so you, as the elected representatives of the community, come forward with laws or proposed laws that protect the community's values as you understand them. And then these laws would ultimately, if someone's charged, it would go to a judge or a jury. And those people who would be from this community would then be asked to apply this law to the conduct, and they could express their judgment. Does this conduct violate this law of the community, basically? So, and that's where a jury made up of reasonable people, and it could be a very diverse group, but I think that's the way our legal system works. And those of you that have served on juries know that there is debate, discussion. Everybody brings their life experience, their education, their thoughts, their opinions to it. But it's supposed to be based on the evidence and then based on the law. And so I think that is the backstop that prevents overreach for things like this, that I acknowledge that some of this isn't black and white. It's kind of, I was thinking about it, talking to somebody, just don't be a jerk. I mean, it's if you're going to be a jerk and somebody says, hey, cool it, and you don't, you may be disorderly. So, but ultimately it would come down to, does a judge and jury in this community agree that that behavior falls under this statute and is unacceptable? So with that exciting entry, basically we're adding, and I just printed this out on the screen so the public could see it. Person is guilty of disorderly conduct when that person willfully engages in a violent, tumultuous, or offensive conduct, or by threatening, traducing, quarreling, or challenging to fight another person, or fights with another person in a public place. I think Again, Mr. Price's point about challenging the mayor to arm wrestle, I think, and Captain Hagar's here from the police department, he could easily explain that there is discretion exercised by law enforcement. Councilmember Wood could address that too, that, yeah, there's things that you could twist and say, yes, this is a challenge to fight, but that's not the intent of the law, and I think a police officer would not go and apply that. And ultimately, then we get back to a judge and jury, and I can see a judge saying, really, are you kidding me, Gridley? You're going to charge the mayor for deciding to arm wrestle here? Get out of here. So I think that, again, is the backstop on some of this. But we do see, and I think you've heard from Chief White and others about the concerns of fights going on. Many times it's people that have been drinking, using drugs, but particularly downtown, that recently that's been a problem. So, but wherever it happens, this is a tool that if it's witnessed by a police officer, they could cite somebody. Another addition is makes noise that is unreasonable considering the nature of the actor's conduct, location, time or day or night, and other factors that would govern the conduct of a reasonably prudent person under the circumstances. So if we all get together at the football stadium or down at NIC and yell at the top of our lungs at 7 o'clock at night on a Friday night for a football game, we're not going to get charged. On the other hand, if we gather in somebody's apartment complex at 1 o'clock in the morning and we're got everybody awake and yelling and screaming and all that, that would probably be considered unreasonable under the location, time of day or night. So again, it gets back to, and I will concede that it is not a decibel or not a scientifically measurable standard, but it's a community standard, and it's a community standard for behavior that the community said, or if we adopt this, that you would say, no, that's not. We want to give the police a tool and the prosecutors a tool to deal with people that are unreasonably loud in locations and at times that don't make sense. So, one of the issues that comes up sometimes is, well, there's free speech, and that kind of goes into the next one, engages in violent, noisy, or riotous behavior that would be frightening or offensive to a reasonable person who might be expected to be in the vicinity. We all respect the First Amendment and the right to free speech, but there are limits on free speech. The classic is you can't scream fire in a crowded theater, and there's other examples of things that, no, speech can be limited, time, place, and manner by the government. And so the goal, I think, is to deal with or give the law enforcement, police and prosecutors, a tool that would allow them to deal with behavior that is basically unreasonable, that the average person would say, that's unreasonable. We now have body cameras that can capture a lot of the behavior that goes on. I think that will go a long ways to demonstrating, if it comes to a judge or jury, what was happening at the time, and they'll be able to judge for themselves, is that reasonable? Maybe it's reasonable to be a little bit loud on Sherman at 11 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock. Is it reasonable to be in your neighborhood, in front of your house, being loud and obnoxious at 1 o'clock in the morning? Maybe not. So I think also, in talking to Chief White and Dave Hagar, Captain Hagar, they're not looking to write tickets. They're not, and we're not looking to take on more prosecution, put anybody in jail. So it's the people who get a warning and then don't choose to follow a warning or maybe think about modifying their behavior. This gives a tool to take it to the next step. So that's kind of what disorderly conduct is about. If you have any questions, be glad to address them.
So Mike, I had seen something in a correspondence that I had gotten that said something about downtown. This is not just downtown Coeur d'Alene. This is a citywide ordinance. It applies to wherever within the city of Coeur d'Alene.
Right. If you're fighting over in our neighborhood there,
Yeah.
we'll cite you just like anybody else.
Questions for Mike? Christie, did you?
Oh, he
Or-
beat
I'm
me
sorry.
to it.
Well, just
Dan.
on that's good to point out that it's not just for downtown.
Right.
And, the unreasonable noise thing, it's something that I've thought about when, as elected officials, we make a choice and we put ourselves out there and, we get an earful from people with some frequency, but that's different than if they showed up on my street out on the sidewalk, if it could somehow just be limited, to me, that's one thing. But, the neighbors shouldn't have to hear it. Frankly, our, dog would get upset. And so that is, the whole noise thing. And again, not to protect us, but, the neighborhood has a reasonable expectation to not have that go on, even if it was, 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something. But also agree that this isn't, it's some kind of tricky balancing act, and everything's a bit of a balance. So I think this, seemed reasonable.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Mike, I would just comment, I would expand a little further on some of your comments, that law enforcement deals with hundreds of Idaho codes, hundreds, dozens of city ordinances that they use to enforce, and they use their discretion every single day. This wouldn't be any different. Officers would use their discretion, and we put a lot of trust and faith into officers to use good discretion. So I'm not concerned at all about it being misused in some way to take away someone's freedom. We know that we have an issue, whether it's the downtown area or throughout the city. We know that we have an issue we need to address. Chief of Police came before us a couple of months ago. He brought with him body cam footage that showed some of the awful things happening after dark when people want to be downtown having dinner or wherever throughout the community, and then all of a sudden by 9 o'clock at night, the whole town changes. And, as we move into the summer especially, you're going to have families coming off the lake with their little kids just trying to get a bite to eat and maybe get back to their car, walking through this zone of people that just had no regard for the safety of other citizens. The body cam footage that we saw was, initiating fights, looking at maybe we could deal with riots, property damage. And we already know in this community we have dealt with some really heinous crimes. We had a young man 2 years ago that lost his life right downtown due to a fight situation where he wasn't fighting, he was the victim. And so these are real issues. And if we're going to be a city that really, really cares about the safety of our citizens, then we have to step up and make sure that we keep them safe. That's our role, to give law enforcement the tool to keep people safe. You look at some communities across the nation, and the politicians seem to get in the middle of it and want to make sure everybody has their right, I guess, to create mayhem. And then you have cities in disrepair. And so for me, it's not about whether we want to restrict people's freedom. It's about we want to keep our community safe. We're not going to allow that kind of behavior in our community. We want everyone to be safe and enjoy all of our amenities. And so it's only reasonable, you talk about a reasonable person, that we would assist law enforcement. We asked them to come up with some solutions. They brought it to us. We gave them directions to work with your office, come back and strengthen this ordinance so that they actually had something they could work with. When you've got gang members coming over from another state trying to initiate terrible behavior, being violent toward our own citizens. And so I like this. I think you took an existing code and made it stronger and gave law enforcement the tool that they need. And so I'll be supporting this.
Thank you.
I might add one comment on comment you made. The discretion exercised every day, you're totally right, by the police. Same way, the other end of the law enforcement spectrum, if you will, are prosecutors. And Wes Somerton is the chief city prosecutor, and Eileen McGovern, who's a deputy chief prosecutor, at least for another month or so before she becomes the chief prosecutor in Post Falls. We're very proud of her. They exercise that same discretion because occasionally there are cases where people are cited and ultimately look at it and go, I don't think this fits, or I don't think we can prove it, or for whatever reason, it gets dismissed. So I think there's two levels of that discretion that, again, gives a backstop that we're not just going to be willy-nilly writing tickets to people who don't deserve it.
Absolutely.
Another example that occurred to me is Coeur d'Alene. We all love to go down to Coeur d'Alene, and holy cow, you got to cover your ears. It's so loud. Well, under that location at that time and place, with the permission they're granted, that's legal. If they come and do that, in front of the church at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, that's probably not reasonable. So there are examples, hundreds of examples you could use that where one behavior, it's reasonable in one situation and would be unreasonable to the average person, ordinary person in another. So.
Christy, I think we could look to a couple cities to the west in I don't want to pick on anybody, but
Well,
when you look at the
sometimes
cities,
we have to.
when you look at the cities of Portland and you look at the cities of Seattle and what is allowed to go on there,
Absolutely.
there's some things that need to be changed there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, any other questions from Mike?
And Mike, when you talked about community standards, I don't think I've ever heard that terminology. Where does that come from? And do you guys use it regularly? He's shaking his head over there. The guy who has to do the dirty work. What's your take on
Yes. Well, he's got to go on a regular basis in front of judges and juries and convince them that a behavior that's been, a person that's been charged, that violates a law. And what are laws? Laws are rules adopted by you or other elected officials that govern the behavior for all of us. And I'd like to drive faster on some roads. I'd like to, there's things that I may not agree with, but you make the rules that I think reflect the community standards, the values of the community. So, yeah, that's something that we take into consideration. Maybe not use that phrase, but I know all of you do too. When you pass or you vote to approve a zone change, or you vote to, you're thinking, is this consistent with our comp plan, our community values there, or other community values?
I have to say, Christy, you seem to clarify it. It made it real simple for me to grasp this new stuff. I mean, you gave it that historical perspective that I appreciate. Thank you.
Other questions? Kiki?
Just clearing up a couple things. So in the beginning, you said the reasonable terminology kind of follows what would happen if there was a negligence complaint. So it's not a brand-new term. It's kind of a quasi-legal term. Is it fair to say?
Right, under civil law, if you're in a car accident, let's say, the question will be, were you negligent? Was your behavior negligent? And that is basically judged on a standard of conduct, ordinary care under the same or similar circumstances. So if you're driving too fast through a crowded area, that may be negligent because under the same or similar circumstances, an ordinary person wouldn't do that. So, yeah, the reasonable man or reasonable woman standard is pretty standard in the legal profession.
And then my other question was, I kind of liked this, I like when someone brings something forward and it makes you think again, the arm wrestling thing, like, okay, well, could that be interpreted and how is that? But I think this says in that situation that the disorderly conduct would have to be a person doing that with the intent to communicate a serious expression or to commit an act of unlawful violence to a particular individual. So I think arm wrestling wouldn't really be a direct effort to commit an unlawful act of violence. So
Well-
I don't think it could be, I'm just trying to see, am I reading it right, that it probably, a law enforcement officer wouldn't interpret an arm wrestling issue as
I
that?
wouldn't think so.
Well, the first amendment we made is engages in violent blah, 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 or challenging to fight another person. So if an arm wrestle is fighting, then that might,
Yeah,
but
but the ordinance does say with the intent to commit an act of unlawful violence. So I don't know, maybe arm wrestling is good. So I guess I'm just wanting to clear up that language because it's a good chance to make you think. And I just don't know what the response, to people who would try to turn it into something it's not. I believe the intent, and to turn it into, this is a limiting of speech, it isn't in any way, or a limiting of, it's an ordinance that already exists. And I do think, our law enforcement has come to us and said, give us something. The last thing I had, though, was, what is the difference between disturbing the peace and disorderly conduct? I know we're expanding fighting because that's what our code said and that's what we're changing, but disturbing the peace versus disorderly conduct, and what's some definition there?
they're very similar. We've kind of blended some of the concepts together. Traditionally, there's been case law that a police officer's peace cannot be disturbed. And so if a police officer witnesses something that would be disturbing the peace to you, he or she can't just cite the person for that. They would need a victim. So I guess the police officer cannot be the victim in that situation. And so what we've done with this ordinance is that if a police officer witnesses this behavior, the state is the victim, the community is the victim, or would be charged by the state, but he can cite based on what he or she sees. We don't need to get the neighbor to say, yeah, I'll sign the complaint, thereby creating a difficult situation between those neighbors, or we got to get a bartender to sign the complaint, or we got to get the person who was sitting next to the fight as a victim, or in the fight as a victim. So I think that's one of the goals that we looked at and tried to achieve, was that this would allow officers who witness a behavior like this to then issue a citation.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, just one more question. Mike, I know that you and Captain Hager and Chief White spent quite a bit of time on this, and I know you researched other cities and what's working in other cities. So this is not brand new. This is an ordinance that has been tested out other places.
No, we are the smartest people in the world.
I know
We're
you
the
are.
first people that
I
came.
know.
We would never steal something from Boise or any other place like that. No, yeah, it's been good. I want to also, Chief White, Captain Hagar, and Captain Walther, who you know have known a long time, has been around a long time, has worked patrol. He contributed a lot to this. And again, Wes's staff, Wes and Eileen, and then Kyle and Matthew, the other attorneys, prosecutors. I see Wes's finger on the button. Would you like to say something?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, Russ.
He's been itching.
Just don't say I was wrong about something.
I would have called upon you. I didn't know.
I looked at all 50 states and many of the communities in this state. Looking at disorderly conduct, statutes, seeing what was similar, and much of it's very similar around the country. Removing what's not appropriate. Every state has different constitutional allowances, and this is what we have. So we're going to go back to the definition of fighting. That's been in place since 2007. We created that ordinance at the request of the police department because there were problems occurring in downtown. And we've not had a problem with that definition in all that time. So that helps some of that answer. The community standard, not only is it broad, but it's also narrow. So what may be allowable in a particular neighborhood that everybody gets along with may be different for another neighborhood. And law enforcement, when they're out on the scene, they have to take those, each individual microcosms within our community into consideration when they're making those determinations. The next level of that discretion are the prosecutors. We are the only people, prosecutors, that can bring a charge to trial. We are the only people that have the authority to bring it to trial and the only people that have the authority to dismiss it short of trial. That's an awesome responsibility that our prosecutors deal with every day, and we appreciate the confidence you give us to have that and to exercise that. And we are guided by principles that make sure if law enforcement overstepped a bound, we have an ethical duty to try to find justice short of a case. If the case does not have legs to stand in court, we have an ethical duty to make sure it does not go to court. And we exercise that every day. This language does give law enforcement the ability to deal with those situations that you saw in the video, that Councilwoman Wood spoke about, the years of experience, and it's frustrating for law enforcement to show up to a scene of a bunch of knuckleheads busting one another up, busting up property, and nobody wants to file charges against one another. But yet it's a melee in our community. It's not acceptable. Law enforcement needs a tool to be able to use that. At the same token, Captain Hagar's troops recognize when they show up to a situation that is acceptable and may not be acceptable to somebody else, their badge does not get bigger. It's the same size. They get back in their car and they go on to the next call. And that happens every day.
Thank you, Wes. Other questions of council? If there are no other questions, we'll be looking for council action. There's that funky little piece at the beginning that we have
I
to
would
do.
make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 21-1006 once by title only.
Second?
Motion is second to dispense with the rules. Any further discussion on that? Roll call, please, Sherry.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Motion carried. Sherry, if you could read the title, please.
An ordinance amending the municipal code of the city of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, amending chapter 9.22 entitled Fighting, providing repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing severability, providing the publication of a summary, and providing an effective date.
So we're looking for one more piece of council action.
I'll make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 21-1006.
Second?
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Move on to our public hearing. Both of these are legislative hearings tonight. The first one is legislative hearing V-20-01. This is a vacation of a portion of excess Celtice Way right-of-way adjoining the southerly boundary of the Coeur d'Alene Honda Auto Dealership and tax number 3599 in the city of Coeur d'Alene. If anyone wishes to give comment, there's a sign-up sheet over by Troy somewhere. And then we have Dennis Grant online to give us a presentation. Dennis.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council, and thank you for that. And tonight we have those two vacations. The first one, the applicants are Family Holdings.
Dennis, I might stop you for just a minute. We're having a little problem with the volume. So I don't know if you could speak directly into where we need to speak. Or...
All right, testing.
Okay, give it a shot there.
All right, I'll try to talk better. Sorry. Okay, so anyway, the applicants are Family Holdings and KLSRMS LLC, and they are requesting a vacation of right-of-way along the southerly portion of property frontage on Celtice Way. The exhibit is shown on your screen, hopefully, and it shows the two locations there by Coeur d'Alene Honda. And the history is back in 1926, it was called U.S. Highway 10, and now it's known as Celtice Way. And the right-of-way width adjoining this property, it varies between plus or minus 200 feet. The vacation of the requested right-of-way would not have any financial impact on the city and would add approximately 0.6 acres to the county tax roll. It would be a benefit to the city as tax revenue and to the landowners whose lots adjoin the strip of usable property. We have had several of these vacations over the years, including the Atlas Mill property, and they're at the Coeur d'Alene Sprinkler property. And the purpose of this request is to vacate this unused portion of right-of-way along the north side of Celtice Way, east of Atlas Road. Celtice Way was recently constructed, widened, and rebuilt. As a part of this construction, a bike path was added along the north side of Celtice Way. The applicants are proposing to vacate this portion of Celtice Way, which is approximately 1 foot north of the current trail as shown on the exhibit. The request would not have any impact on future expansion future expansion of Celtice Way corridor since the project is complete. The development review team was informed about this vacation and has no objection. As passed earlier tonight on the consent calendar, all the water and sewer easements have been accounted for, and I mailed out 39 certified mailers and had 4 responses. 2 were for and 2 were neutral. So the recommendation is the City Council should approve the vacation action per Idaho Code Section 50-1306 and to vacate the property to the applicants stated earlier. Any questions?
Council questions for Dennis? Woody?
I just have excuse me, Dennis, it looks like the right-of-way's already been done for the Honda dealership. Is that correct?
Yes, the Honda dealership itself went through the vacation process approximately 7 years ago, maybe 8 now, and they must have acquired the property to the west and the property to the east, and now they're coming forward to vacate those 2 parcels, or right-of-way pieces to go along with their parcels.
It looks like that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions for Dennis? All right, thank you, Dennis. Now I'll open up the public testimony portion of this hearing. There is no names on this list. Anyone in the audience wishes to testify on this that's not on the list? Doesn't look like it, so I will close the public testimony portion and look
Mr.
for
Mayor?
council action.
I'd like to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 1007 once by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. Sherry, if you could read the title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene vacating a portion of Celtice Way right-of-way, generally described as a parcel of land adjoining the southerly boundary of the Coeur d'Alene Honda Auto Dealership and tax number 3599 in the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt Council Bill 21-1007.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. The second legislative hearing that we have is V-21-01, vacation of a portion of undeveloped right-of-way adjoining the southerly boundary of Tract 335 of the amended plat of Hayden Lake Irrigated Tracts in the City of Coeur d'Alene. Once again, Dennis.
All right, thank you. Vacation number 2 for tonight. Hopefully, this microphone is working better. The applicant is Don Smock, and he is requesting the vacation of a portion of undeveloped right-of-way that adjoins the southerly boundary of his property in Tract 335 of the amended plat of Hayden Lake Irrigated Tracts. Just a side note, we did have a similar vacation here a while back on another piece of the Hayden Lake Irrigation Tracts. For some history, the requested right-of-way was originally dedicated to the public in 1910. The vacation of this requested right-of-way would not have any financial impact on the city and would add approximately 12,500 square feet to the county tax roll. This is a minor amount, but it would benefit the city in tax revenue, and it would benefit the landowner that owns the northerly piece. The purpose of this request is to vacate a 20-foot strip of right-of-way originally dedicated for an irrigation line. The irrigation line is no longer needed nor controlled by the Hayden Lake Irrigation District. The additional right-of-way can be incorporated into the development of the adjoining property. All utilities are existing and in place, and there is no foreseeable use for this additional right-of-way. The development review team was informed about this vacation and has no objection. There were 78 mailings sent out, and I had 3 responses, 2 for and 1 against, and only one of those that was for had a comment and basically says that Don Smock has been doing other subdivisions in Coeur d'Alene and has done a great job, and that was the comment from them. And the recommendation is the city council should approve the vacation action per Idaho Code Section 50-1306 and to vacate the property to the applicant, Donald Smock.
Thank you, Dennis. Council questions for Dennis on this? Woody?
Just one, Dennis. I think I talked to you about this. It looks like it's an extension of what was on the east side of Cornwall Street. Is that correct?
That is correct. It went all the way through Sunshine Meadows, clear into Coeur d'Alene Place at one time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so at this time, I'll open up public testimony for this hearing. On this list, I don't have anyone listed that would wish to give public testimony. Anyone in the audience wish to be added to the list? I'll close the public testimony now and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 21-1008 once by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Motion carried. Sherry, if you'd read the title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene vacating a portion of undeveloped right-of-way located in the amended plat of Hayden Lake Irrigated Tracts, recorded in Book C of plats on pages 66 and 67. Records of Kootenai County, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, generally described as that 20-foot wide strip of land adjoining the southern border of Tract 335 of said plat, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and effective date hereof.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to adopt Council Bill 21-1008.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? One final roll call, please.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Move to adjourn.
Motion carried. Motion to
Second.
adjourn, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.